Good afternoon. Will you join me in a word of prayer, please? Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for gathering us together for remembering Al, a man who touched our hearts. We just pray now that your grace and your mercy and your comfort would be upon us all. That, Father, that you would just reach down and touch every heart. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Albert Koury was born September 10th, 1933 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Passed away December 13th, 2014 in Escondido, California at the age of 81 years. He was survived by his wife of 38 years, Ellen Koury, his daughter, Linda, and husband, Mike, his grandchildren, Natalie, Lauren, and Jake, brothers, Wayne Unsel and wife, Sarah, David Unsel and wife, Carol, his sisters, Jeannie Harris, Diana Patton and husband, Elwin, and Donna Unsel. When we come to a moment like this, sometimes it's extremely difficult to know where to begin. Al was a complicated person. You could not characterize him easily because he fit into so many different places and he could communicate so easily with anybody. When we look at what the world thinks is important, the world will tell you it's all the accomplishments, it's all the notoriety, it's all of the awards. And Al had all that. But in this last week, when we would get together, no matter if it was family or friends, and we shared stories, none of them centered around those things. Everyone centered around Al, the man, and how he had touched our hearts. And every memory would bring laughter, and some would bring tears. But everyone just brought that moment of revelation. No matter what he said, you go, yep, that's Al. So we come here to remember the man. We come here to thank God for giving him to us for 81 years. The testimony of everyone here is a testimony to the heart that he had. Jesus tells us in Luke 6:45, he said, "The good man brings good things out of the good that is stored up in his heart. And the evil man brings evil out of the evil stored up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks." Al had a good heart, a big heart. His entire life, he was pouring out the good, which shows you how much the Lord poured into his heart. It is good for us to remember. It is good for us to go back and tell each other those times when Al touched our hearts. And I guarantee everyone here has more than one story. And so that's what we come today at this memorial service, is to share some of those memories. There's no way in the world you could cover them all. But I guarantee that when we do, and we say, "Do you remember?" there'll be a spark of recognition in every face as we go, "Yes, I've met that man." When I thought about what to say, it's just a jumble of emotions and a jumble of memories. But there are several things that I learned from my brother Al. I'm not going to go through all of them. But one of the first things was I learned how to really laugh. I don't know, there is no way anyone here could spend more than 5 minutes with him that you did not, in some form or fashion, laugh. And I guarantee that just about every memory we're going to laugh because he was a character. And he could go into any situation, any group, any place, and he could make people laugh. When we started meeting with Al and Ellen and spending summers with them, Al never, ever hesitated to tell my wife, Carol, off-color jokes. And I'm not going to tell any now. But it wasn't the jokes that were funny. My wife has a tendency to be extremely naive at times, and she very seldom ever got them. Al's enjoyment was explaining to her what they meant and then watching her face, just like it is now, turn red. And it never failed. No matter how many times, he would still get her. And of course, I would laugh along. And then Ellen told me this week that they took a boat down to Puerto Vallarta and stopped at the port and went inside this store, and there was a parrot in there. She said they hadn't been there too long, and all of a sudden that parrot uttered a Syrian curse word. And sure enough, there was Al over there teaching this parrot to curse in Syrian. Now this is an intelligent man, and he saw the parrot, and the first thing he said was, "This is my opportunity." First got to, Al always would tell me, he said that he went off to college and came home one day and there I was. So yes, I'm David. I am the baby of the family. And I enjoy that now. But I'll never forget when my mom was sick, we would all get together at her house and we would celebrate Christmas together. And I'll never forget this one time. We always kind of joke, that we always knew when Al was coming to town because Mom would make bread and kibbe and all that other good stuff. Well, he came this time and we were sitting down there and Aunt Adele was there. And of course, Adele and my mom would start talking in Syrian. And Al looked at me and he said, "You know what they're saying?" And I go, "No." He said, "They're cussing." You know, I think back and I'm not real sure they were but I said, "No, not my mother." He said, "Oh yeah." And for the rest of the time, every time they would start talking, I'd go, "Wonder what they're doing." Well, that's also the time he brought anisette, which is good. And we were playing cards, we were playing Trivial Pursuit or something, and he said, "Here, try this." And so he just go and taste it, just like licorice. And boy, I could down it. And then he poured a little water in there, and everything was going really good till I got up and found myself on the floor. And he just thought that was pretty funny, and in front of my mom, too. Al was also one of the most humble men I've ever met. I've never met anybody who's done as much as Al has done, but I've never met anybody who's talked less of what he has done. Now, he told stories of going to China, and I think they almost they thought they were going to burn the hotel down. And all these, but when he told the stories, it really wasn't about him, it was about the people. It wasn't, "Look what I did." He said this was just a funny story. And that humble aspect of him meant that he could talk to anybody. Al was a engineer, accomplished great things. My brother Wayne's a civil engineer. I'm the baby of the family. I'm an English teacher. But at no time was I ever meant to feel that I had chosen a lesser profession or that what I did was not important. Because Al would turn around and tell me about the time they fried the satellite that's now in the Smithsonian. And then he would turn around and he'd say, "Tell me about your class." And I knew he cared. And that's a quality that we don't often see. People really today like to talk about themselves. They like to build themselves up. Al would immediately get out of the way and he would turn to you and he would say, "Tell me, what's going on? How's it going?" And he would ask questions because he cared. That humility, I think, is what opened the door to every one of us. Because he could talk to those who were older and he could talk to those who were younger. He could talk to people in authority and he could talk to Hicks from Oklahoma. And he would make you feel like you were the most important because you were. That's one of the reasons you like to be around him. And I don't think he ever ran out of stories. I really do not think he ever ran out. And he just drew you into his heart. And that humility is what really, really drew you to him. I remember we went to Santa Fe several years ago. And at the time, I was having some trouble at school with not students, but the administration. And I'll never forget the last day before we all parted. Al took me out in the back and he said, "David, I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay." He said, "I want to know how it's going at school. Are things any better?" And I just stopped and I thought, wait a minute. Taking the time to find out about me and my superintendent. And so we sat down and we had a nice conversation. And I told him that it was still tough. And he said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "You hang in there. You do what's right." He didn't often give you advice, but when he did, you listen to it. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. I told Linda to do that or anybody else.
Speak for yourself, Dave.
Yeah. Just forget that and just run it back. I never said that. That's my wife. But that made a big difference. It made the drive home a lot better. I knew that I wasn't in it alone, and Al would do that for you. If you needed him, he was there no matter what distance separated you. He was also one of the most generous men I've ever met. Proverbs 11:24 says that some people give much, but they get back even more. Others give what they should and end up poor. Al never stopped giving. And I'm not talking just about money. I'm talking about his time. I'm talking about his experiences. I think when we really started going out with Al and Ellen, that's when we really learned what it meant to eat out. And we need to have a Koury map of the world, really, because there's no cities on it. They're just restaurants. And no matter where we were going, oh, you got to try this little restaurant's on the corner. Yeah. And Al would constantly be inviting us, and Ellen would be constantly inviting us to places. We've been to Santa Fe. They brought us out here and took us to the Wild Animal Park and took us behind the scenes. And there's my wife there, and the guy in there says, "Anybody want to feed a giraffe?" Well, of course, Carol did. Stuck a carrot in her mouth, and the giraffe ate it out of her mouth, and they were sitting there taking pictures. And so there really is. Took us to Palomar, got to see the stars for real. And so we had all those experiences. And I remember one time Carol said that we were going out and went out to eat, and she said, "Al, you need to let us pay for it." He just turned to her and he said, "Why?" And then he paid for it. And that's my brother. And he never looked around to see, and that's what the scripture says. When you give generously, you don't look to receive because you've already received your reward. His reward was just seeing a smile on our face, of allowing us to participate in those things. I remember when we went to Palm Desert, there's gambling out there. Did you know that? I'm terrible. Carol's not too bad. I usually start with $20, and if it lasts 10 minutes, I'm good. And sure enough, it didn't last 10 minutes. So I'm just standing around, so Al and Ellen say, "Here, you need to gamble because we're going to save for it." I said, "I haven't won." So they gave me $50. I just wanted to take it and cash out. But no. And sure enough, I lost that too. But probably the most important thing is Al taught me how important family is. I'm related to most of you in this place, I believe, though I don't know many of your names, and some of you probably never knew mine. When my mom was alive, when we would get together, I would say, "I'm David." They wouldn't know who I was. But then I would say, "No, I'm the son of Marion," and they would go, "Oh." And because of what they thought of my mother, I was instantly accepted. Well, when Mom passed away, I'm David. I'm the son of Albert. And I got the same reaction. And I was never more proud to be able to say, "That's my brother." Al can talk to our aunts. He can talk to grandkids. He can talk to any walk of life. He brought this family together. At no time did he ever refer to me as his half-brother. Never. Every time we went somewhere, he said, "This is my brother David." And after a while, you realize that there really isn't anything more important than those relationships. It's those memories that we've come to share. It's when Al touched our hearts, and it's when he opened up his heart and poured into ours. Every one of us was important to him, and we know it because he took the time to show us. I remember Carol and I pastored a church, and several years ago we finally built our first building, and we were going to have the church dedication. Well, my family came down, Al and Ellen with them. If it was important to us, it was important to him. Diane and Ellen's granddaughter was getting married one time in Woodward, Oklahoma. Al flew in, drove up to be there at the wedding, drove home with Carol and me so he could spend one night in our new home, and then went back to Oklahoma City and flew out. And I went, that's an awful lot. And I almost said trouble, but I realized for Al, it was not trouble being with family. He never counted the cost. He said, "I'll be there." Those are the things that we come to remember. Those are the things that can never be taken from us. God says, "Store up treasures in your heart that will not rust, that cannot be taken." Those are the memories that we come to share today. And so now I want to ask Linda, Al's daughter, to come up. And I apologize for taking that one line.
Don't go anywhere though.
Okay.
Okay. So, I am Linda, and I am my father's daughter, as I waited until last night to write this. As David so eloquently said, my father was a good speaker. I unfortunately did not get that from him, so this is going to be short. I do want to thank you all for coming out today to celebrate his life and mourn our loss. he was a very special man. I mean, he touched all of us in his own way, and I think, David, you told a lot of good stories about that. Let's see, sorry. I have a hard time speaking in front of people, but he did have a way of telling lots of good stories, and he was able to talk to everyone. So please, you'll just have to bear with me a little bit here. I'd first like to say thanks to Ellen. We all love you very much. Sorry. And he did also, you know, you made him very happy. And he told me that all the time. I mean, he loved you truly. He was very happy spending his life with you. And thank you for being there with him through everything and always being there by his side. I did learn many, many years ago to listen very carefully to what my father said. He was a good storyteller, but he didn't often sit down and tell me, like, dole out advice and say, this is what you need to do. But at one time, he told me the main story I have about my dad is when I was a senior in high school, he said, I'll pay for your college. And I was so excited. I thought, yeah, I get to go to college. This is going to be great. And then as that thought bubble was up above my head, I heard him say, but, and I'm like, uh-oh. You have to pick a school that's 100 miles away from home. And I was so disappointed. Like, he's kicking me out of the house. What's going on? But he knew me better than I knew me, and that was probably the best thing that he ever did for me. Made me stand on my own 2 feet, taught me how to be a real person, take care of myself, and blossom into someone new. And how to fix my car, yes. But he was always there to take care of me, no matter what. He'd shove me out the door, but I knew he was always there. And I never had to worry about anything. So I think that's going to be the hardest thing for me. I'm not sure who to turn to now to ask those questions of. Right, I lost my place, sorry. And what I think my Uncle David touched upon also that really touched my heart is that we all enjoyed spending time together as a family. I mean, to this day, we still took vacations together as a group. Me, my kids, my husband, and every Thanksgiving and Christmas we all spent together, both sides of the family. It's just been, and he was able to talk to everyone. And I can't tell you how much we enjoyed him. Sorry. As I said, I don't think I remember him ever sitting down and telling me, this is what you need to do, or he didn't have those cliche sayings of, you know, fatherly advice. The only thing I really remember him always telling me is that he loved me. And that's what I'll always remember. Thanks.
Now here's Wayne, the middle brother.
Thank you, David. I'll talk about 2 recollections from Al. The first was my first recollection, first memory of Al. I was 9 years old. Al just graduated from A&M. He had a 57 baby blue Mercury convertible, and he'd visit us in Oklahoma. Now, I spent my summers in El Paso with my mom usually, stayed at Uncle Fred and Aunt Joe's usually, so I spent probably 10 summers there. And I don't remember the details, but Al was going to take me to El Paso before Mom got out there. I was 9 years old, beautiful car. And we were in West Texas. I was asleep, and Al woke me up. The car was stopped. I thought we were going to get gas or get food. And he says, we ran out of gas. I'm going to stop a car and I'll go get gas, and then I'll come back and we'll go on. And I thought, well, okay, I'll get ready to go. He goes, why don't you just stay here with the car? You can get in the bath and go to sleep. And I'm thinking, okay, West Texas, okay, 9-year-old. I said, I believe Al, I'll trust Al. So there I am. I don't know how long it was. It probably seemed like 5 hours to me. The sun was just starting to come up, cars would come by. West Texas, 2-lane road. And finally some car stopped. Of course, I didn't know what to think. And it was Al. He had his gas can, filled it up, we went and got gas. So the lesson I learned was when you see this gas station at this exit, don't think you're going to get to the next gas station, because you're not. That was a fabulous lesson. The second lesson I learned, I put another story in here, involves Linda. You'll have to pardon this. I don't know if you remember this. I like to fix things, and I like to work with him too. I learned a lot from him about automobiles and how to repair all kinds of mechanical devices. And we were doing a brake job on his Oldsmobile. And we didn't have manuals. Al didn't believe in that. You just took things apart and put them back together. Well, we took it apart and we put everything in order. He said, well, if we take it off, put it in order, we just put it back the same way. Well, we took it all apart, had everything laid out on all the brakes, and we took a break. We wanted to get something to drink, eat, or something like that. Well, Linda, we had hubcaps out there, and I guess the attraction was too much, and Linda put all the parts. I know, she did help. Put it all in the hubcaps, and so we got out there, and everything was nice. And I said, no problem. He said, we just start putting stuff back on. And the key is, if you don't have anything left over, you've probably got it right. So to this day, when I have to take things apart, I know if I can get everything back on, it's probably going to work right. Second lesson in life. And now for my life lesson. And I don't know if Al ever knew about this. I'm an engineer, and I'm an engineer because of Al. When I graduated high school, I didn't have any background in engineering. My school didn't talk about engineering, but Al was an engineer. I knew of his accomplishments, and I agree with David. He's very humble. He never talked about his accomplishments. But I was going to be an engineer because of Al. So my first year, he was an electrical, the space thing, so I was going to be an aerospace engineer. Well, I found out real quick. I wasn't going to be an aerospace engineer, but I was going to be a civil engineer. Al was my mentor. He didn't know that because he has to know he has a mentee. He didn't know he had a mentee, but he was my mentor. He was my hero. He was my role model. I thought the world of everything that he'd done as an engineer, and I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be accomplished. I also wanted to be like him in terms of humble. He never talked about his accomplishments. But what he did professionally, because I didn't have anyone else to talk to from an engineering speak, and I loved having those conversations with him. They weren't enough, but they were fantastic conversations. You know, what he did with ComSat, communication satellite, what he did with ground stations in Brazil, trip to China with Nixon, the work he did with GM after GM bought Hughes. I aspired to be like him in my own profession. Accomplished, but very humble about it, not bragging about what I did. He never did. But I always aspired to be like him that way. I don't think he knew that. Maybe he does. Thank you.
to listen to Aunt Dorothy, or as I learned, Dorothy. I don't know, the Koury house is kind of strange sometimes.
Well, it really took me a long time to get this together because it's just hard. And I agree with so much that was said here. And David, you took some of my thoughts and you expressed them right there. So I didn't want to be redundant. And he just was just one person out of 10 million you'll never find again. So I'm just going to start. Oh, I do want to say, Linda, that your dad always said when he first sent you off to college, he said, the best thing I can do for Linda is to send her away and let her grow on her own and find who she is. He was very aware of what he was doing all the time. And you and Mike have carried on this tradition of keeping the family together, and I don't know how you do it, with 3 children who have all different things that they're doing. They're well-read, they're well-rounded, they watch some TV, they're active in sports, they're just fantastic kids. And you guys still do all of the celebrations at your house, and I thank you for that. You're a really wonderful family, so thank you for carrying on. All of you are aware of Al's accomplishments. His trade traveled all around the world, literally, and lived a full and rewarding life. Al was one of those people, you know, you hear how people say to you, live in the moment. That's a very hard thing to do, because we often look back or we look forward and we forget about this is all we have is this right now. He knew how to do that. He knew how to live in the moment. And it was just something to behold. For example, this was a man that was on dialysis, and then my other nephew that is so dear to my heart had passed away a year and a half or so ago, and Al and Alan saw to it that Koury would have dialysis in El Paso so that he could be with his friend and nephew, cousin. That's just the kind of person he was. Nothing stopped him. Nothing. I teased him and told him I was going to call him EB for energizing running, because that's just what he was. He just never quit. His generosity has already been told here, not just with the material things. For example, Natalie, this is from the Koury collection, because I told her I would say this, that Alan has such a way of finding clothes for me that I swear to you wouldn't find myself, and they always fit perfectly, everything. And so the kids dubbed all of that my Koury collection. So every time they see me, they would say, oh, is that from the Koury collection? Yes, it is. So I told her that that's what this was. He would be the first one there, as you said, if you were in need, in trouble. He wasn't just there for the good times. And he and Ellen both. I can't think of him without her, because they did everything together. Both had such generosity of spirit. He's left a void in our lives, but also a sense of joy for having known him and having had him a part of our life. So I can only be grateful for that. He left us too soon. Any time he would have left us would have been too soon. Any time. I remember our shared life in 3 stages: Pennsylvania, Texas, California. In Pennsylvania, I'm just going to go off these cards for a minute because I think I can do better this way. He lived in Pittsburgh, and I lived in a small town in Ford City, which was about 40, 50 miles from Pittsburgh. And Al and Jeannie and Diane were all in there. We would go to Pittsburgh, and that was always a big treat for me. But they also loved coming to this little town of Ford City, and we go to the park, and I have little pictures of that. They loved that. So we were together, and it was never as anything, but we were like sisters and brothers. We lived together, always in the same house many times, and our whole family was like that. This comes from my mother. My mother had always told us that family was the most important thing in the world, and you took care of each other. And we always lived that way. That was the best lesson she could have taught us. And one thing that happened when we were in El Paso, we moved there after I finished elementary school, was I was off at college, and Al was a couple years behind me at Texas A&M. That was my brother. That was a brother's school. And I brought home with me a friend of mine to spend a couple weeks in El Paso, a girl named Joe Schaefer. I was living with my brother and his wife at the time, and I stayed there. Well, something that I did didn't please my brother, so we were on the outs, and I just left. I went over to my sister Marion's house. She was not in town, but Al was, Jeannie, and Joe, and we were there, and I gotta tell you, we hit Juarez many, many nights and had more fun than you could imagine. Texas was a dry state, so need I say more? No. Anyhow, it suddenly occurred to us that we don't have any money. What are we going to eat? Well, the gods were looking upon us again, because here's Jesse Friedman. He was a friend of Al and Jeannie's from Pittsburgh. He was in the service stationed at Fort Bliss, working in the kitchen. And he would supply, and I use the word supply very, very broadly, supply us with the meat that he could get. Well, guess what the meat was? Liver. And we had liver every day for almost 2 weeks. And I gotta tell you, when you're hungry, it tastes like steak. So it was good. It was good. But that was just one of the things that, that brought us so close together. Then after that, when I went to college, I wanted to go really badly. I had gone to San Francisco, stay with my sister Adele, who was another one, my second mom here. And I wanted to earn enough money to go to college. So I worked for a year, went back to Denton, and when I finished, I decided I got a job in Port Arthur first year to teach, Port Arthur, Texas. And I told Mom I wanted to pay her back, and she said, no, you send the money to Al so he can finish college, because he had enough to put himself through the first 2 years, and then when he graduates, he can pay me back, which is exactly what happened. So I sent him his checks, and he paid her back afterwards. So it was the same thing. We're taking care of each other in the family. And it was just gladly done. It was without any thought about it. It was just you just did this. So, but again, it was from my mom, and he adored her, and she him. Okay. Then we moved to, let's see what he did. Then Linda, okay, the next big thing was Linda's birth. And all of you that know him and know her know that this was the apple of his eye. She was just it. And he said, Dorothy, he said, you hear about the terrible teens and the different times. He said, and I want to tell you, with Linda, never one day of trouble, ever. She was just that wonderful. And when I see the look in his eyes, the complete love, it was just unbelievable. And he felt the same way about her children. I can't tell you how many trips they shared and all the memories that he has given them for the things that he has done with them. And Barry and Ellen, I want to say that was the best thing that happened to him was when Ellen came into his life. She was truly his soulmate. They were just such a perfect fit. It was just something to believe in, an example for all of us. I can't believe that everything they did was with such generosity of spirit and so much love and just immediate family and friends. And it was always one word, Ellen. It just was, and it always will be. And Jeannie, Diane, Wayne, David, he loved you guys so much, and you know that. that he was so proud of all of you and your accomplishments. And he went out there when you had your ministry, when you were getting started in that. Just flew out there. He just does these things, and he and Ellen both, without even giving it a thought. That's what you do. Anyhow, and his Aunt Adele, he had a special place in his heart for you and your children, all of us. And of course with Bill, you know, they were so close. The three of us, Bill and Al and I, were 1 year apart in high school and through college. And Bill was at Shepherd Air Force Base while Al was at Texas A&M, so I would go to College Station a lot, and they would come up to there. So we stayed together all those years. It never changed. And Murray was a part of that also. He was about 8 years younger than we were, but still was part of it, and it's just really very close. And one thing that I will be grateful for that I did do with Al was about maybe a month and a half ago. I just never wanted to talk to him about his illness because then it would make it real, and I didn't want it to be real. But about a month and a half, I said I need to talk to him, so we just sat and talked for about a half hour and told him how I felt and how my life, I couldn't imagine it in this world without him, but I'm so glad we had that talk because it was something that we both needed to do. And just to verbalize it. It was nothing we didn't already know. Everyone in this room, I think, was made to feel special by him in some way, if you knew him at all. You'd know that his wit and his humor and his mind, and I can't even begin to think how his mind works. It was so brilliant. You know, and that I don't think he ever talked to me about it, but just things that I just knew and could read. I read about him, and I would know. And so I just want to say that he was my nephew by birth and my friend by choice, and I will miss him every day.
We're now going to hear from Lou Greenbaum, one of Al's close friends.
Thank you. First, I need to apologize for the cheat sheet. It seems like things that used to stick in your mind now slide away. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce you to a part of Al that you may not have known. And that is Al produced miracles, literally. I'll repeat 2 places where we needed a miracle and somehow they happened. We were getting packed up and ready to go from El Segundo down to Cape Canaveral to launch our first satellite. We had 3 vans, 30-footers, and one of the drivers came up to point out that we were all ready to go except none of our trailers had license plates. Ellen's chuckling, but it was a big deal. So Al somehow sprinkled some dust and poof, we had plates on 3 trailers and 3 of our rented space trailers didn't have any license. In the end, those plates made a half-dozen trips and never had a problem. Let me relate one other Al story. One of our bosses once said in a meeting, unfortunately like this, that be damn sure you want it done before you tell Al to do it. Because he's going to get it done. Let me talk about a miracle that occurred while we were in China. And that turned out to be more physical than you might think. It was cold and wet. We almost insisted that we wanted to have an American meal. And Al and the guy who was our mentor, the Chinese fellow, actually found a Chinese gentleman who knew how to do roast beef. And the miracle that occurred was suddenly there was a full case of scotch in with our spare parts. I attribute that to Al's collection of miracles. He's the one who thought ahead far enough to know that the time would come when we needed to sit with our Chinese friends. While on China, I had the opportunity to talk with some Chinese gentlemen, Al and I both, and at our last dinner, I asked the older Chinese gentleman, what did they think of us? And he said, and it's still apropos, he said, we knew you had the best of everything. What we didn't know was you guys earned it. When we first went there, they assigned to each of us a counterpart. When our counterparts found out the hours we worked, they assigned us each a second counterpart. They were good guys, but they worked the way they worked, and we worked the way we did it. Al spread little miracles like that through his whole career. And I, for one, benefited from those miracles. And there are some other of our team that's here to pay homage to Al. I would like to conclude with one other story. I, over the years, had developed a very bad habit. You know, when I walk up to your desk, I'm going to pick up things that are on it. And that's not nice, but I do it anyway. I picked up off of Ellen's desk something that I'll be careful. That's my daughter back there cautioning me about what I'm going to say. I picked up this thing off her desk and was holding it in my hand and said, Al, what's this? And he said, beats the hell out of me. So we went to ask Ellen, what's this thing we picked up off your desk? And Ellen said, why, it's a darn rock. Put whatever word fits best for darn.
It was a passion stone.
It was a passion stone. Ellen still remembers, thank goodness. Many is the time that Ellen and her compatriot got us out of trouble that Al and or I had gotten us into. But when you have a team made up of people like Al, you can get lots of things done. Easy. Thank you, and thank you all for coming. It's much appreciated.
Oklahoma, the thing you told me. There's something that I wanted to add that I forgot. It was with David when he was talking about all the trips to Oklahoma. And I was there one time and he said, you know what? He said, Aunt Dorothy, he said, when Al comes out here, that's when my mom makes all the good stuff. I told Al that. He said, no, that's not true. I said, yeah, it's true. It's true. And also, Mike, I just wanted to tell you that I always just enjoyed the relationship you shared with Al. You guys just always had the needle out for each other, and I know he loved you very, very much. And I did want to say that. Thank you.
And now we're going to ask Ted Thiede to come up here. He's Al's closest friend and best man at Al and Ellen's wedding.
Thank you very much. I've heard so much about Al already that I don't even know exactly where to start. So I'll start when I first met Al. It was in the spring of 1957. I was sent to Spokane, Washington to be a part of what was called an activation team. Al had a 4-man team. Al was the team leader. And his team was already in operation when I got there, so I was treated with a little bit of skepticism to start with. There's one thing I have to tell you about Al that no one has said. Al was really very fast. While we were up there in Spokane, we used to go out on the weekends and prospect for uranium, which sounds today kind of a silly thing, but we did. We went out with scintillators and Geiger counters looking for a source of uranium. And we'd drive up these mountains with a Volkswagen as far as the Volkswagen could go, and then set up a camp. And I was still there in the camp. I'm trying to shorten this a little bit. I was still there, and all of a sudden there's this flash coming down the hill. And it was Al, and all I heard from Al was, "Mountain lion." He disappeared. I have to agree that Al was very caring. He cared about everyone. He cared about me so much that he gave me a new name. My name is really Harlan, but almost everyone here knows me as Ted. It has something to do with my appearance of being something like a bear, I think. However, for the rest of my life, I've been Ted, and that's been very nearly 60 years. I have to thank his aunt here for trying to teach me how to bowl. That didn't work very well, but I enjoyed it. Yeah. And Ellen, I have to thank her for being very patient. We went golfing with Ellen quite often. And I don't know how she put up with me, but the thing that was really bad was every time I'd get to to a green, there'd be a ball laying there by the pin, and I couldn't stand it. It was always Ellen's golf ball. So, I'd like to think I was Al's best friend. To me, he was more than a friend. He was a brother. I know he had other brothers. I didn't have any other brothers. To me, Al was a brother. And all I can say is, goodbye, brother. And we're going to miss you, and we'll see you.
We would now like to open up the mic for anybody who wants to.
Thanks, David. I'm Norm Abbott. Al was my first cousin. First time I met Al, actually my Uncle Fred and Aunt Joe came from Pittsburgh to Ambridge, and we were just little guys. And and we were playing a lot, and I really liked playing with him because we were about the same age. And then they had to go home, and I wanted to go with them. So I said, hey, I want to come with you. he said, well, why don't you pack a bag, you know, and I went there, and then Uncle Fred took off with the car. So I ran for a couple of blocks, but there's no way I'm gonna, you know. That's the first time I ran into that. And then I went to see Al one time. Of course, he lived in Pittsburgh, and there was a Heinz 57 variety sign. We used to throw rocks at that all the time. That's the second time I remember Al. And then later in El Paso, you know, we're pretty close. Al used to call me his older cousin because he's about 3 months younger than I am. Anyway, yeah, we had a lot of fun together. He used to come over to my mother's house because he was working for Hughes Aircraft as a tech rep, and he was traveling a lot and eating out a lot, you know. He was saying, oh, I'm sure tired of eating this filet mignon all the time. So he came over for some real Syrian food, you know. When I heard that, I said, you know, I got to go to college. So I did, actually. I got a BSEE, MSEE, I was a PhD for a while. Anyway, I'll keep this short. I called Al a couple of weeks ago because I was trying to, you know, cheer him up, get him off his thoughts. So I told him about this house painter that he always got the lowest bid because he thinned the paint down all the time, you know. And he got this contract to paint a church. So he's up on the scaffold, almost done, when a big storm hit. And it knocked him off the scaffold, and the rain washed all the water off the paint. So he was laying there in the dirt and the paint and everything. He looked up, he said, Lord, what can I do? And a loud voice from above said, repaint, and thin no more. That was one he liked. He thanked me for calling him, you know, because there's nothing you can say or do. It's just one of those things. Thank you for the time. Thank you, David.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Wildemuth, and I got the pleasure of meeting Al through Ellen, as Ellen and I worked together quite a bit in the golfing world. I had the pleasure of meeting Al at one of our Christmas parties at my home, and we had something in common. My grandmother is a Koury, so Al and I got to spend some time together researching and talking, wondering if we were related down the line, as my grandmother also lived in Pennsylvania, in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So we had fun talking about the Arabic food, the kibbe, and I had to laugh because you talked about speaking Arabic and did they know what we were saying. And when I grew up, when my parents and grandparents were speaking Arabic, it is because they were swearing and they didn't want us to know what they were saying. So it was a pleasure getting to know Al a little bit in that aspect, and enjoyed talking to him on the phone several times, and we will miss him. Thank you.
I'm Hugh Greenbaum. I'm Lou's son. I remember as a child spending a lot of time with Al and Linda and Alan at their house. There were times when my sister Donna, my brother Jack, and I felt Linda was more a sibling than a friend. But Ted mentioned a Volkswagen, and I remember a Volkswagen being the bane of Al's existence. And there were a number of occasions when he and my father would be doing working with this Beetle. And I remember one particular occasion when they actually did have the manual out, The manual was written by German engineers who tend to be very precise about certain things. And they assume that you have a master mechanic and a journeyman. So at one point, as they are doing surgery upon this beetle, they come to a point where it says, now have your assistant hold the wrench while you turn the ratchet. Well, at this point, they had to stop and think about this for a minute because they weren't entirely sure who was the assistant. So when I heard other people talking about Al being humble, this is one of those occasions when I heard Ted talking about the Volkswagen and thinking about time spent with Ellen and Linda. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Oh yes. And no, I can't talk about that because I'm not allowed to say things like that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Gilbert. I'm married into this family, and I never had a better experience in my life, to tell you the truth. I married Rhonda, and you know, my background is in philosophy, so when I think of someone living a great life, I also think of the fact that they're going to die. This is what we all have to go through. And what happens if you think of it as negative, you're not doing well with the person's life. Death is a beautiful thing because it has to end a beautiful life. And therefore, all these experiences that you heard with Al show that he has a beautiful life, and I'm sure he's beautiful wherever his soul is now. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Donna Greenbaum. I'm Lou Greenbaum's daughter, and my mom asked me to think of memories of Uncle Al, and I couldn't think of a specific memory. It's a feeling, and I realized as we were talking today that Ellen and Al, like my parents, have formed what I think of as a man and a woman, and they formulated who I spent my life with, how I raised my children, and really ultimately how I have my career. So I just wanted to say thank you.
I'm Elle's cousin, Rhonda, and I wrote a few things down here. I would say that our body and our spirit or our soul is such a mystery. And truth, that the soul is in the living body and it's seen from within, and the body is the outer existence of the living spirit within. Al's body has departed this earthly realm, as we all will do when it's our time. Yet his spirit remains in our hearts and in our thoughts. His steadiness of character is seen in his daughter Linda's relationships with others. His generosity, his compassion, and his love that he gave to his family and his friends is seen in his wife Ellen's character. Their love for each other was beautiful. They were always supportive and very much fun to be with. His humor and his ability to play in life he had with him to his very last days. When he was told these last week of his life that his son-in-law, Mike, was on his way there with his grandchildren, Natalie, Lauren, and Jake, his comment was, "Tell them to put on their dancing shoes." For death, it's not a bad thing. It simply is a part of birth, life, the birth, life, death cycle. So we can put on our dancing shoes and celebrate the spirit of Al as a truly good man. Thank you.
No, this was in my note cards, and it is really something I absolutely have to share with you, and I hope Jeannie doesn't mind. Where are you, Jeannie? There you are. Anyhow, maybe you can help me with this word later, Nada, but anyhow, I found out about a year ago. Jeannie did not have a very good relationship with her father, to say the least. And Al, you know, he was always the kind of person that could just let things roll off. And I never knew how he could do that. I would say to him, you know, I wish I could be more like you. These people could bore you to death. And they think that you make them think they're the most interesting, exciting person in the world. And you phase them out, but you hear everything they said. I said, with me, it's written all over my face, I'm bored, let me get out of here. But anyhow, his dad, so he could get over his dad, but she couldn't. And her name was, we call her Jeannie. And her dad always called her, this is an Arabic word, I'm not sure exactly how to translate it. I think it's something like, hey you, something not very nice. And it was Walik. And he would say, Walik Jani. That's how he would call her, and never ever called her name. So Al's telling me this story, and he said, you know, for the longest time, I thought her name was Walik Jani.
Anybody else?
My name is Merle Alhiser. I'm a longtime resident here and friend of Al and Ellen. And I wanted to share with you my impression of Al. Al, in my opinion, was one of the most gentle persons that I ever met. Never got excited about anything. He was slow to anger and slower to forgive. There were a lot of things Al and I had in common. We were both in the aerospace industry for over 30 years in different companies, but we got to share a lot of common stories that happened. I need to share with you a golf story, since a lot of his golfing friends are here. And it was a great help to me. When I was president of the men's club in 1994, that's like 20 years ago, Al was the tournament chairman. And we had a large membership at that point, between 100 and 200 members in the men's club. So we'd have large tournaments, turnout, 50, 60 people at least. And the problem we had, and it shows you the creativity of an engineer. You know, all engineers think they can solve any kind of a problem. And it's kind of normal, I guess. Engineers by nature have been solving problems all their life, from first day in college solving math and engineering and physics problems, and then to get into industry, they're constantly solving problems. In fact, they get real uncomfortable when there isn't a problem for them to solve. And what do? They usually go out and create a problem so they can work on it. But anyway, Al, the problem we had in the men's club was keeping guys to stay to hear the tournament results. And if they hadn't had a very good day playing golf, they'd go home. And we'd end up with a very small number of people for the award ceremony. So I said, Al, you know, we need to do something about attendance and keeping people here. He said, I can solve that, he said. I said, oh, how? He said, promise them something for nothing if they stay. And that's when we instituted the policy of having part of the tournament entry fee go to door prizes. So we'd have a 6-pack of beer, bottles of wine, we'd have all kinds of things. Your name was just going to get drawn out of the hat. If you were here, you won, go take your pick of all the prizes. So That started a policy that I really appreciated from Al, but it just shows his creativity. He solved the problem real fast, and he's a good man and a good friend, and I'm going to miss him.
Fred Judge, where are you? You want to say something, Fred?
It's too late, Fred. You're going to say something.
I think I'll have to pass. Oh, okay.
Jerry.
I'm Terry Martin, and I'm his family with Nada Aziz. We came here from El Paso, Texas, and he does have a lot of family in El Paso, or he did have. We've lost a lot of them. And on the kindness of Al and Ellen, my brother was very, very ill, and they realized the severity of his illness. And my brother was a great guy, and we had a malignant brain tumor in the front lobal portion of his brain, and it was grade level 4. And he had the gamma knife done and did whatever he could, and Al and Ellen knew how serious it was, and they were there for him. And they were there for my mother. They both adored him. My mother adored him. And when he was in the hospital here in California, she wouldn't leave his side. And it was Al and Ellen that were there for my mother to make sure that as long as she needed to stay and be with her son, that she was. And I will always, always remember that. And my brother always used to say, I think Mom loves you more than she does me. And Al would say, no, I don't think so. And then one of his college friends, which is Norman Haddad, went to college with Al, and he was always bragging to Al about me, about him to me. And he said, I was always jealous of Al because he was smarter than me. And he said that when they were here for my cousin's funeral, Bill Aziz. And he said that in front of Ellen, and Al's reply was, and I still am. Al will be missed, you know. And Ellen and Al, you're the best, and we love you.
The Bible tells us in 2 Timothy 4:7, Paul at the end of his life, he wrote, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Some people in this life fight for fame, fight for position, fight for money, fight for themselves. But the Lord talks about a good fight. It's the good fight of faith. Al fought a good fight. Everything about him was always focused on other people. Even to the end, when I knew he was ill, every time we would talk, he would never focus upon his problems. He'd always call to see how we were doing. And he never failed to end the conversation by saying, I love you. I've been around a lot of men who would never say that. And what a shame. But even more important, when Al would say that, he would also back it up. Driving out here, I just prayed that he would know how much I loved him. I think he did. Because there's no doubt in my heart how much he loved me. That's a good fight. Even to the end, he was looking out for us. And the Bible tells us that love is the greatest gift we can ever give, because that love will never end. As long as there's a memory in us, the love that Al had for us will never end. And that love now we can extend to others. I think Al and Ellen at some point realized that Carol was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And that is the truth. Well, I know my brother is a great man, but Ellen, you had a lot to do with that too. And Ellen, Linda, you really are your father's daughter. In every best possible way. I thought about how I might end this. And at this time of the year, one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a little bit corny, but the message is so astounding. And in that story, George Bailey gets into trouble, always regrets things, never realizes his effect upon people, and then at the end he faces a huge crisis. And at the end, the entire town comes to his aid. And his younger brother, Harry Bailey, comes in, and he stops. And he says, I want to toast my older brother, George Bailey, the richest man in town. Not because of money, but because of all of the friends and all of the love. So if I had a drink right now, I would toast my big brother Al, one of the richest men I will ever know. And I would thank him because we are some of the richest people because of him. I want to end with a prayer, and then I believe we're going to hear a song, and then we will be finished to visit. But the Lord says, this is called the Aaronic blessing. It says, the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. Thank you, and God bless you.
Where's Francis? Well, I got one of them.
Too bad. Go ahead.
Okay. Ellen, we're so happy that we could be here to share the remembrances of Al. It's been a wonderful occasion to hear all of his family tell all the wonderful stories, and the Hughes people, of course, have so many wonderful memories. And whenever I think of you and Al, I think of Al as a handsome groom and you as a beautiful bride getting married in our house way back. I didn't realize it was 38 years ago, but I saw in the write-up it was 38 years ago. And that was a wonderful occasion for us, beautiful occasion, and we were so excited. And that's a memory that I always have of you both. And we send you all our love. I'm sorry Fred couldn't speak. He has a little memory problem now. He would have loved to have given a tribute to Al. had so many wonderful memories of him. But anyway, we're glad to be here with you, and thanks for everything. Bye-bye.
Hi, you know who I am. Uncle, it's all about you. Uncle Al, you're probably one of the most intelligent person I've met in my life. So blessed to be your nephew and have life with you. What you've done to this world with so many people, you've been there for them. You just make everybody feel so well and so welcome. I have so many memories of you, things you've done for me as a child, taking me all the summers. I spent the whole summer with you. You sent me to Auntie Dorothy's, hang out with you. That's strange. Just watch you have Linda as your daughter, bring her in this world and watch her grow. And you've always been there for everybody. Everybody in this whole place here knows. And they say your name, they all have great memories of you and what a great person you are and what you've done. You've touched for all of us. And Ellen, too. Thank you, Uncle. I love you so much. You made my world a better one because of you. I try to always think forward and have a better life. Thank you, Uncle. I love you so much.
And Ellen, I just wanted to tell you that Doug and I and my family appreciate everything that you've always done for us. Every Christmas, we've always been able to count on you to send something to our door. And I've been married into this family for 22 years and have seen a lot and heard a lot. And the one thing I know is that Uncle Al was the patriarch of the family, and everybody really looked up to him, and we're going to really miss him a lot. And if there's anything that you ever need, we're always here for you. Love you.
Hi, I'm Dale Watkins, and I was surprised none of the other golfers mentioned Al's problem-solving ability on the course. This is a tough men's group, and they don't allow gimmies. And Al, given his problem-solving capabilities, he found the way to get around that. Al was master of the scrape. Everybody would putt. Normally a putt would leave the putter face somewhere along the line, but no, Al had a very long, languid stroke that had him follow that ball all the way into the cup, and no one ever called on him. That was Al's problem solving of the lap of gimmies here at Meadow Lake. Good for Al.
Okay. And to talk about wine, Al knew the best wines. He did know the best restaurants. He and Ellen just are the best couple. We're the best and are the best that I have ever seen. Their love is fantastic. I remember Al when I was like 12 and everybody was going to go see Ella Fitzgerald at Coconut Grove, which nobody knows what that is. And all the adults were going to go, and my sister and I wanted to go, and he made sure we went. And I mean, you know, that's just the way he was. He just did things like that. He did. And these last 10 or 12 years, I've enjoyed living a little closer to them as I have, and sharing rides, going over to Linda's for Christmas and Thanksgiving for their house. And he was so good to my mother when my dad died. He and Ellen came in and helped her with everything, putting new blinds in. You know, he was like that for the whole family, and it was never a second thought. He just did it, and I love you, Al. Thank you.
Well, I have to say one thing, that I've been very misfortunate to have married her, because I wouldn't have met Al. And that was a big part of my life, let me tell you. He's a wonderful guy. When you go to the family gatherings, you know, most of the time you go to family gathering, you're going to go like, oh man, I got to see that person and that person. This one you went to family gathering and said, we're going to see Al. And Ellen. That's going to be a high point. Besides the lady I came with. Thank you very much, Ellen. Thank you very much, Ellen. That's it.
Just auf Wiedersehen, Al. Until we meet again. I love you. Alan, you're still the best. They don't make it any better.
I just want to tell Ellen I share her sorrow, and her and Albert, they are special people. They always be in my heart, and we're going to miss them a lot. Love you.
That's why I start you off laughing.
Okay.
Good, you're on.
I really said most of it when I gave my speech up there, but
Just Al is my favorite Aggie, and I don't know who I'm going to share the games with now, but Giga Maggie's. That's it. I love you, Al.
I'm Frances, Ellen's cousin from Texas, and what I remember about Al, he was the kindest, sweetest, humblest man I think that I've ever met, and he did always say, "I love you," give you a good hug, and when they would come see us, and we would come see them, and that's just what I remember about him, and he took good care of Ellen, and she took good care of him, so I'll just always remember that hug and that I love him.
My name's Sissy Peach, and I'm married into this family, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. I've enjoyed every bit of it, and starting from when we got married, Al and Ellen were at our wedding, and every 5 years we'd come back for our anniversary, and Al and Ellen were always there to celebrate with us. I loved him very much, and we had great times together when he would come to Texas to the family reunion. When we took our vacation with the family and we went to Hawaii, he was just wonderful, and we loved him very much, and we will miss him very much. And I hope he knew that we all loved him. And that's all.
For Al, I guess you'll never know how much you've influenced us, the family. Such a positive role model for Justin. When he would come out, the visits Jamie and Justin have had out here are just memories that could never be replaced. We appreciate Ellen and Al so much. I guess they just a good mentor and role model.
I'm Lester Kirkland. I'm married into this family. My wife and Ellen are first cousins. When we first got married, there was this mystery guy from California named Al that I didn't know and wondered about a lot. And then when I finally got to meet him, I didn't realize what a great guy and good friend he had become, and what a special person he is and was, and all of the nice things and kind things that's been said about him today from his own family. They all transferred to our part of the family, and one of the things I always appreciated him most about was his interest in us and the interest he had in our children. They were at graduations and weddings, and I never saw Al that he didn't want to know how my kids were doing, and how he was always very, very complimentary of what great kids they were. Sometimes I wondered if he really knew the same ones I did, but he was a great guy, and I loved him dearly, and we'll miss him. Thanks.
Hey, I want to tell you about Al and I being opposite polar. He lived in El Paso, I lived in Texarkana, which was, well, a little town close. Polar opposites. He went to A&M, I went to University of Texas, very rough rivals. We came to Hughes, went to school. He went to Washington State. I'm in Florida, living it up on the beach. So that's the way the times have come. But he dearly enjoyed the Aggie jokes. You've heard them all, I'm sure. But the best one of the bunch, we didn't think much of Oklahoma either, which, well, we said that if an Aggie moved to Oklahoma, it would raise the IQs of both states 50 points. And Al would get a kick out of it. He'd turn him around though, and then he'd say, "You tea-shippers from Texas, you better move to Oklahoma." good. It was.
Now tell them your name, so I wanted them to remember.
I'm Ray Pierce,
And
an
you
old
live in
Hughes guy for 31 years, and I live in Rancho Bernardo, just south.
right south of here.
5 or 6, 10 miles maybe. Been there. I came to San Diego. Instead of going into space, I stayed in the radar and missile systems group, and we started the fleet introduction of the F-14 radar and Phoenix missile system for the Navy at Miramar Naval Air Station.
And what year did you, Hugh, start at Hughes? It was at 55 also?
56.
56, the year after us.
Just early 56.
So you started in field service and support too then?
Yes.
That
I did. But I was in the infrared lasers, radar and missile systems group my entire time.
Yeah, Al spent most of his time, well, he was in field service and support, and then he moved on to space and comms, so he was there for forever.
We were in Germany for 4.5 years on the F-102. And we did test programs at Holloman Air Force Base, then Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. When I was there, we shot off 50, 100 missiles. I don't know how many. Testing the 102 and the Falcon missile system. And he was going around activating new squadrons. They built 550 some F-102s. So we had a lot of squadrons. Here they were all in Air Defense Command. And in Germany they were Western Europe Air Defense.
Al always told that story about the F-102s. He was in Alaska and said he had this little guy come out and he had to radar him off of the airplane, and this little guy said all that radiation says won't be a problem with it. And Al's telling him no, and says about that time a butterfly come flooding by.
You don't stand in front of the radar when it's transmitting. It can, they say, would help create cataracts. So you don't run in front of the antenna when it's radiating.
Who knows what they were doing?
You've got to know to be safe around the airplane.
Absolutely. Okay, this is Frances again, Ellen's younger cousin from Texas, and I have just a question. I just wonder if anybody has ever pondered this. How did a roller skating sensation raised in Escoda, Trent, Texas, managed to come to California and discover something better than gold? She found Al Koury, and he has added so much to all of our lives, and we all just think he's something special. So I just wanted to say that. Love you, Ellen. Love you, Al. Thanks.